The Ted Bundy Murders, Seattle, 1974-1978. The air in Seattle, Washington, during the mid-1970s carried an undercurrent of unease, a creeping dread that no one could quite name. Young women, bright, ambitious, full of life, were vanishing without a trace. The University District, with its bustling campus and vibrant student life, should have been a place of promise. Instead, it became a hunting ground. At the center of this nightmare was Theodore Robert Bundy, a man whose charm and good looks masked a darkness so profound it would shock the nation. Between 1974 and 1978, Bundy's reign of terror claimed at least 30 lives across multiple states, though some believe the true number could be far higher. His crimes were not mere acts of violence. They were calculated, grotesque rituals that left communities paralyzed with fear. This is the story of a predator who blended seamlessly into society, a wolf in sheep's clothing, and the chilling legacy he left behind. It begins in the early hours of the 4th of January, 1974, in Seattle's University District. Karen Sparks, an 18-year-old dancer and student at the University of Washington, was fast asleep in her basement apartment. The night was quiet, the kind of stillness that lulls you into a false sense of security. But someone was moving in the shadows. Bundy, then 27, slipped into her home like a phantom, his movements silent and deliberate. He carried no elaborate tools, only a metal rod pried from Sparks's bed frame. What followed was a scene of unimaginable horror. He bludgeoned her with savage force, the blows shattering the silence and her skull. But that wasn't enough. In a depraved act, he sexually assaulted her with the same rod, tearing through her body and rupturing her bladder. Sparks survived, but only barely. She lay in a coma for 10 days, waking to a world where her vision and hearing were permanently damaged, her life irrevocably altered. The brutality of the attack sent a ripple of fear through Seattle, though no one yet knew the name of the monster responsible. Less than a month later, on the 1st of February, 1974, the nightmare deepened. Linda Ann Healy, a 21-year-old undergraduate at the University of Washington, was known for her warm smile and her morning radio weather reports for skiers. She was the kind of person who lit up a room, dependable and kind. That night, she went to bed in her basement room, unaware that she was being watched. Bundy, emboldened by his first attack, crept into her home under the cover of darkness. He beat her unconscious with a precision that spoke of chilling confidence. Then, in a macabre act, he dressed her in blue jeans, a white blouse, and boots, as if preparing her for some twisted journey. He carried her away, her body limp in his arms, and drove to a secluded area outside Seattle. There, he raped and murdered her, her life snuffed out in a place where no one could hear her screams. Her remains would later be found on Taylor Mountain, a grim graveyard where Bundy left many of his victims. The discovery of her blood-stained sheets and neatly made bed, devoid of her presence, haunted her roommates and the police alike. Seattle was no longer safe. In the first half of 1974, female college students began disappearing at an alarming rate, roughly one per month. Donna Gail Manson, a 19-year-old freshman at Evergreen State College in Olympia, vanished on the 12th of March while walking to a jazz concert. Her body was never found, but Bundy later confessed to her murder, his words cold and detached. Susan Elaine Rancourt, an 18-year-old student at Central Washington University in Ellensburg, disappeared on the 17th of April after attending a campus meeting. Witnesses recalled a man struggling with a stack of books. Asking for help a ploy, Bundy used to lure her to his tan Volkswagen Beetle. Her skull, too, would later be found on Taylor Mountain, alongside Healy's. Roberta Kathy Parks, a 22-year-old Oregon State University student, went missing on May 6. Her skull later discovered among the others. Brenda Carol Ball, 22, was last seen outside the Flame Tavern in Seattle on the 1st of June, talking to a man with his arm in a sling. Jorgen Hawkins, a 18-year-old sorority girl and cheerleader, vanished on the 11th of June, last seen near the University of Washington. Bundy later admitted to knocking her unconscious and strangling her, his confession delivered with a chilling lack of remorse. The summer of 1974 brought the horror into broad daylight on the 14th of July at Lake Sammamish State Park, a popular spot east of Seattle. Bundy struck with audacious boldness. It was a warm, sunny day, the park teeming with families and friends enjoying a rainier beer picnic. Janice Ann Ott, 23, and Denise Marie Naslund, 19, were among the crowd, unaware that a predator was circling. Bundy, calling himself Ted and wearing a fake arm sling, approached several women, charming them with his handsome face and easy smile. He asked for help loading a sailboat onto his car, a ruse that played on their kindness. Ott agreed to help and followed him to his Volkswagen. Hours later, Naslund, too, fell into his trap after heading to the park's bathroom. Bundy later confessed that one woman was forced to watch as he murdered the other, a detail that underscores the depths of his sadistic cruelty. Their bodies were found 2 months later, alongside Hawkins, in a wooded area near Issaquah, a mile east of an old railroad trestle. The discovery of their remains, scattered and ravaged by wildlife, sent shockwaves through the region. Seattle was gripped by panic, and the name Ted became synonymous with terror. Bundy's method was as cunning as it was horrifying. He was no hulking brute lurking in alleys. He was a chameleon, blending into the world around him. Handsome, articulate, and intelligent. He had graduated from the University of Washington with a psychology degree in 1972 and was enrolled in law school at the University of Puget Sound. He worked at Seattle's Suicide Hotline Crisis Center, where he met true crime writer Ann Rule, who later penned The Stranger Beside Me, a chilling account of their friendship and his hidden brutality. He dated Elizabeth Klupfer, a single mother who found him warm and loving, unaware that he was killing women who bore a striking resemblance to her petite, with long, dark hair parted in the middle. Bundy's charm was his greatest weapon. He posed as an injured man, a police officer, or an authority figure, disarming his victims with a smile before unleashing his true nature. Once they were in his car, he would bludgeon them unconscious, restrain them with handcuffs, and drive to remote locations where he could indulge his depraved desires. He often revisited his victims' bodies, grooming them, and performing necrophilic acts until decomposition made it impossible. The police were baffled. The disappearances were linked by vague descriptions of a man named Ted driving a tan Volkswagen, but Bundy left little forensic evidence. The rudimentary techniques of the 1970s were no match for his cunning. Witnesses reported seeing a man with a cast or sling, but he was always one step ahead, exploiting the fragmented communication between police departments. As the body count rose, so did the fear. Parents warned their daughters not to walk alone. Students clutched keys like weapons. The Pacific Northwest, once a haven of natural beauty, felt like a trap. Yet Bundy's confidence grew. In August 1974, he moved to Salt Lake City to attend the University of Utah Law School, leaving Seattle's nightmare behind but taking his darkness with him. The murders continued in Utah, Idaho, and Colorado, each one a grim echo of the horrors he'd inflicted in Washington. What made Bundy so terrifying was not just his brutality, but his ability to live a double life. To the world, he was a rising star, charismatic, ambitious, politically active. He worked on Nelson Rockefeller's presidential campaign and was seen as a future leader. But beneath the surface, he was a void. A man who found deep, almost mystical satisfaction in murder. As he later confided to FBI Special Agent William Hagmeyer, he described his victims as possessions, their deaths forging a twisted bond that made the places where he killed them sacred. He called his early years as a killer amateur and impulsive, but by 1974, he had entered what he termed his prime, or predator phase, a chilling admission that he had been honing his craft for years. Some, like criminologist Matt DeLisi, believe he may have started killing as a teenager, possibly as early as 1961, when 8-year-old Anne Marie Burr vanished from her Tacoma home near where Bundy, then 14, lived. Though he denied involvement, the case remains unsolved, a haunting question mark in his bloody legacy. Seattle in 1974 was a city under siege, its people unaware that the charming young man they passed on the street could be the monster they feared. The disappearances of Sparks, Healy, Manson, Rancourt, Parks, Ball, Hawkins, Ott, and Naslund were just the beginning. Bundy's spree would stretch across state lines, leaving a trail of shattered lives and unanswered questions. His ability to evade capture, even as suspicion mounted, was a testament to his cunning and a grim reminder of how easily evil can hide in plain sight. As the investigation tightened, one woman's courage would begin to unravel his facade. But that's a story for another time. For now, Seattle trembled, and the name Ted echoed like a curse in the night. The autumn of 1974 draped Seattle in a golden haze. But beneath the crisp air and falling leaves, a sinister rhythm pulsed. Ted Bundy had left Washington for Salt Lake City, his tan Volkswagen Beetle humming down the highways, carrying a predator in search of new prey. Yet, even as he slipped away, the city he terrorized remained electrified with fear and fascination. The man called Ted was no longer just a shadow. He was a specter, haunting every alley, every campus, every whispered conversation. Women checked their locks twice, their pulses racing at the sound of footsteps behind them. But there was something else. To a perverse allure to the mystery. Who was this charming killer who could smile his way into a woman's trust, only to snuff out her life? The answer was closer than anyone dared imagine, and the unraveling of Ted Bundy's charade would be as mesmerizing as it was horrifying. In Salt Lake City, Bundy settled into his new life with the ease of a chameleon. By day, he was a law student at the University of Utah, his dark hair neatly combed, his boyish grin disarming professors and classmates alike. He attended classes, took notes, and charmed his way through social circles, all while carrying the weight of at least 9 murders in Washington. But the move didn't dull his urges, it sharpened them. On the 2nd of October, 1974, 16-year-old Nancy Wilcox vanished from a holiday suburb. She was last seen in a Volkswagen, her fate sealed by Bundy's practiced ruse. Her body was never found, but he later confessed to strangling her and disposing of her in a remote canyon, his voice chillingly matter-of-fact. The kill was swift, almost mechanical, a sign that Bundy was refining his craft. The pace quickened. On the 18th of October, Melissa Ann Smith, the 17-year-old daughter of a Midvale police chief, was walking home from a pizza parlor. She was vibrant, with dreams of college and a life beyond Utah's quiet streets. Bundy spotted her under the glow of a street lamp, her auburn hair catching his eye. He approached, his arm in a fake sling, his voice smooth as velvet. "Could you help me with something?" he asked, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that felt both thrilling and unnerving. She followed him to his car, her kindness, her undoing. He bludgeoned her unconscious, drove to a secluded spot, and indulged his darkest impulses. Her body was found 9 days later in a canyon, naked and battered, her face frozen in a silent scream. The discovery sent Utah into a panic, the parallels to Seattle's nightmare impossible to ignore. Then came Laura Ann Aim, 17, on the 31st of October. It was Halloween, and the streets of Lehigh buzzed with costumed revelers. Laura, a free-spirited girl with a love for adventure, was hitchhiking after a party. Bundy, cruising in his Volkswagen, saw opportunity. He pulled over, his smile warm, his demeanor that of a concerned stranger. "It's not safe out here," he said, his voice dripping with faux sincerity. She climbed in, unaware that she'd stepped into a trap. He drove to American Fork Canyon, where he raped and strangled her, leaving her body in a shallow grave. When hikers found her a month later, her remains were skeletal, her beauty reduced to a grim relic. The brutality shocked even seasoned detectives, who began to suspect a single killer was stalking the West. But it was in Bountiful, Utah, on the 8th of November, 1974, that Bundy's mask nearly slipped, and the drama of his downfall began to unfold. Carol Dayranch, an 18-year-old telephone operator, was shopping at the Fashion Place Mall when a man approached her. He was handsome, with piercing blue eyes and a mustache, dressed in a sport coat that screamed respectability. He introduced himself as Officer Roseland of the Murray Police Department, his badge glinting under the mall's fluorescent lights. "Someone tried to break into your car," he said, his tone urgent but calm. Carol's heart raced, but his authority was convincing. She followed him to the parking lot, where he led her to his Volkswagenette, a police cruiser. A faint alarm bell rang in her mind, but his charm drowned it out. He drove her to a supposed substation, a dark, empty lot that felt wrong. Inside the car, he snapped handcuffs on one of her wrists, his movements swift and practiced. Panic surged through her. This wasn't a cop. This was a predator. What happened next was a heart-pounding clash of survival and sadism. Bundy pulled a crowbar from the back seat, raising it to strike. But Carol was no passive victim. She screamed, kicking and clawing, her adrenaline-fueled strength catching him off guard. The handcuffs, poorly secured, slipped from her wrist. She threw open the car door and tumbled onto the pavement, scrambling to her feet as Bundy lunged after her. The street was dark, the air cold, but a passing car's headlights illuminated the scene. Bundy froze, his face a mask of rage and calculation. Carol ran, sobbing, until she flagged down a couple who drove her to safety. She was shaken but alive, her story a chilling glimpse into the killer's methods. At the Murray police station, she described Officer Roseland in vivid detail, about 5'10", dark hair, clean-shaven except for a mustache, driving a tan Volkswagen. The police took note, but Bundy was already gone, melting back into the night. Fate, however, had other plans. That same evening, just hours after Duranche's escape, Bundy's hunger drove him to strike again, a reckless move that would tighten the noose. At Viewmont High School in Bountiful, a theater troupe was performing The Redhead. Deborah Jean Kent, a 17-year-old student, left the play early to pick up her brother. Bundy was there, lurking in the parking lot, his adrenaline still pumping from the botched abduction. He approached Deborah, likely with the same polished charm, and lured her to his car. She vanished without a trace, her body never found, though Bundy later admitted to burning her remains and scattering them. But he made a critical mistake. A theater teacher, Jean Graham, noticed a strange man in the school's hallway, his presence unsettling. She later identified him from a police sketch, and in the parking lot, police found a small key to the handcuffs used on Carol Duranche. The net was closing, but Bundy's charisma kept him one step ahead. Back in Salt Lake City, he resumed his double life, dating Elizabeth Klupfer, who still saw him as her loving boyfriend, and mingling with law students who found him magnetic. Yet whispers of suspicion began to swirl. Klupfer, troubled by news reports of a Volkswagen-driving killer, noticed odd items in Bundy's apartment. A meat cleaver, surgical gloves, a bag of plaster of Paris. Her unease grew, but his assurances delivered with that disarming smile kept her doubts buried. Meanwhile, police in Utah and Washington began connecting the dots. The descriptions from Duranche, Graham, and Seattle, witnesses painted a consistent picture. A charming man named Ted, about 25-30, with a tan Volkswagen and a penchant for faking injuries. The tension peaked on the 16th of August, 1975, in Granger, Utah. At 2:30 a.m., Sergeant Bob Hayward of the Utah Highway Patrol spotted a tan Volkswagen idling in a suburban neighborhood. Suspicious, he approached, and the car sped off. A high-speed chase ensued, tires screeching through quiet streets, until Hayward cornered the driver. Out stepped Ted Bundy, cool and composed, claiming he was lost after watching a movie. But Hayward's instincts screamed otherwise. A search of the car revealed a chilling arsenal: a crowbar, a ski mask, handcuffs, an ice pick, and strips of torn bedsheet stools of a killer. Bundy was arrested for possession of burglary tools, a minor charge that belied the gravity of his crimes. At the station, his mugshot captured a man unruffled, his eyes gleaming with defiance. When Carol Duranche picked him out of a lineup, her voice trembling but certain, the case against him solidified. The courtroom became a stage, and Bundy, ever the performer, took center stage. Charged with Duranche's attempted kidnapping, he faced trial in February 1976. He waived his right to a jury, trusting his charm to sway Judge Stuart Hansen. Dressed in tailored suits, he played the wronged innocent, his voice steady, his gestures theatrical. He cross-examined witnesses with the precision of a seasoned lawyer, turning the trial into a spectacle. Women filled the courtroom, drawn to his charisma, some even passing him love note, but the evidence was damning. Duranche's testimony, the handcuff key, the Volkswagen. Hansen found him guilty, sentencing him to 115 years in Utah State Prison. As Bundy was led away, his smile didn't falter. He was down, but not out. Behind bars, Bundy's mind churned. Detectives from Utah, Washington, and Colorado began visiting, probing his connection to the growing list of murders. He toyed with them, dropping cryptic hints but never confessing. Meanwhile, his fans sent letters, money, even marriage proposals. Seduced by the myth of the handsome killer, the world was captivated, and Bundy reveled in it. But the walls were closing in. In December 1976, Colorado charged him with the murder of Karen Campbell, a 23-year-old nurse killed in Snowmass in January 1975. Extradited to Aspen, Bundy saw his chance. On the 7th of June 1977, during a pretrial hearing, he asked to visit the courthouse library, unshackled and unguarded. He leapt from a second-story window, landing in the grass below. The courtroom gasped. Ted Bundy was free. The manhunt that followed was electric. Aspen buzzed with fear and excitement, residents locking doors while secretly thrilled by the drama. Bundy, limping from a sprained ankle, vanished into the mountains, surviving on stolen food and sheer audacity. For 6 days, he evaded capture, a ghost in the wilderness. But hunger and exhaustion won out. On the 13th of June, police found him shivering in a stolen car, his charm replaced by desperation. He was returned to jail, but the escape cemented his legend. The world held its breath, wondering what this magnetic, monstrous man would do next. Little did they know, the worst was yet to come. The winter of 1977 cast a brittle chill over Glenwood Springs, Colorado, where Ted Bundy sat in a cell, his mind a coiled spring. His June escape had been a fleeting taste of freedom, a 6-day dance with fate that ended in a stolen car and handcuffs. But Bundy was no ordinary prisoner. His charm, his intellect, his unrelenting hunger for control made him a force that no bars could fully contain. The world watched, enthralled, as the handsome killer, now a household name, plotted his next move. In the quiet of his cell, he wasn't just a man. He was a myth, a dark star whose gravitational pull drew in cops, reporters, and an adoring, misguided public. What happened next would elevate his legend to a fever pitch, plunging the nation into a frenzy of fear, fascination, and morbid curiosity. Bundy's cell in the Garfield County Jail was modest, but his ambition was boundless. By December 1977, he was thinner, having shed 10 pounds to prepare for what he called his grand exit. He studied the jail's layout with the precision of a cartographer, noting every guard's routine, every creak of the building. His trial for the murder of Karen Campbell loomed, and the evidentiary samples found in his Volkswagen witness accounts was tightening like a noose. But Bundy didn't wait for fate to decide. He'd been granted access to the jail's law library, a privilege he exploited to smuggle tools. A hacksaw blade, likely slipped to him by a visitor, and a small sum of cash. Night after night, he worked in secret, sawing through the ceiling of his cell, a 12 by 12-inch square that led to a crawl space above. The sound of metal on metal was muffled by the hum of the jail's heating system, his movements cloaked by the monotony of incarceration. On the 30th of December, 1977, the stage was set. The jail was understaffed, the guards distracted by holiday festivities. Bundy, dressed in a sweater and jeans, slipped a stack of books under his blanket to mimic his sleeping former child's trick, but effective in the dim light. He climbed onto his bunk, pushed through the weakened ceiling, and slithered into the crawl space. The air was thick with dust, the space claustrophobic, but adrenaline coursed through him. He navigated to a spot above a guard's apartment, dropped through a closet ceiling, and landed with a soft thud. The apartment was empty. He strolled out the front door, the cold night air hitting his face like a lover's caress. At 2 a.m., under a starless sky, Ted Bundy was free again. The manhunt that erupted was a spectacle, a high-octane drama that gripped the nation. Colorado police scrambled, setting up roadblocks and combing the snowy mountains. But Bundy was a ghost, moving with a predator's instinct. He stole a car, an old MG with a sputtering engine, and drove east, his heart pounding with exhilaration. By dawn, he ditched the car and boarded a bus to Denver, blending into the crowd with his clean-cut looks and easy smile. From Denver, he caught a flight to Chicago, then a train to Ann Arbor, Michigan. Each leg of the journey, a middle finger to the law. He was no longer just a fugitive. He was a phantom, slipping through America's veins like a virus. Newspapers screamed his name, their headlines dripping with equal parts horror and awe. Bundy vanishes. Killer on the loose. Women lock their doors, but some drawn to his dark charisma whispered his name with a shiver of forbidden thrill. Bundy's destination was Florida, a sun-soaked haven far from the Northwest's rain and scrutiny. By the 8th of January, 1978, he'd settled in Tallahassee, a college town pulsing with youthful energy. He rented a room at a boarding house called the Oak, using the alias Chris Hagen. To the other tenants, he was a charming drifter, a law student with a quick wit and a disarming grin. But the hunger that had driven him in Seattle and Utah was back, sharper now, fueled by months of confinement. Tallahassee was home to Florida State University, its campus teeming with young women, Bundy's preferred prey. The sorority houses along Jefferson Street, with their manicured lawns and glowing windows, were a siren call he couldn't resist. The night of the 15th of January, 1978, was a turning point, a crescendo of horror that would sear Bundy's name into infamy. At 2:45 a.m., the Chi Omega sorority house was quiet, its sisters asleep after a Saturday night of parties. Bundy, dressed in dark clothing, slipped through an unlocked door, his movements silent as a panther's. He carried a heavy oak log, a crude but deadly weapon. The house was a maze of hallways and bedrooms, but he navigated it with eerie confidence. In room 8, he found Lisa Levy, a 20-year-old junior with dreams of becoming a social worker. He struck without warning, the log crashing against her skull with a sickening thud. She never woke. He raped and strangled her, biting her buttocks and nipple with such force that he left deep impressions evidence that would later damn him. Her roommate, Margaret Bowman, 21, met a similar fate in room 9, her skull shattered, a nylon stocking knotted around her neck. The attack was frenzied, a release of pent-up rage and desire. But Bundy wasn't done. He moved to room 4, where Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler slept. The log came down again, fracturing Kleiner's jaw and Chandler's skull. Both women survived, their screams piercing the night as Bundy fled. But the damage was catastrophic: broken bones, lost teeth, lives forever altered. The sorority house, once a sanctuary, was now a slaughterhouse, its walls echoing with the aftermath of unspeakable violence. As Bundy slipped into the night, he struck again, just blocks away. Cheryl Thomas, a 21-year-old dance major, was asleep in her duplex when he broke in. He beat her savagely, but her neighbor's call to police interrupted him, and he vanished. Thomas survived, her dreams of dancing shattered by permanent injuries. Tallahassee awoke to chaos. The Chi Omega murders were front-page news, the city's innocence shattered. Police swarmed the sorority house, their faces grim as they cataloged the carnage. Blood, soaked sheets, bite marks, a trail of terror. The community reeled, students clutching each other in tearful huddles, parents demanding answers. Bundy, meanwhile, was hiding in plain sight, blending into Tallahassee's college scene. He frequented bars, flirted with co-eds, even attended FSU classes as an unregistered student. His confidence was intoxicating, his charm a magnet that drew people in. To those who met Chris Hagen, he was a dreamboat, a man who could light up a room with a smile, but beneath the facade, he was unraveling, his kills growing sloppier, his impulses harder to control. The final act came on the 9th of February, 1978, in Lake City, Florida, 100 miles east of Tallahassee. Kimberly Diane Leach, a 12-year-old middle schooler, was Bundy's youngest known victim. She was bright, with a shy smile and a love for cheerleading. That morning, during a school fire drill, Bundy approached her, posing as a fire marshal. He lured her to his stolen white van, a vehicle he'd been using since arriving in Florida. What followed was a tragedy too grim to fully comprehend. He raped and murdered her, disposing of her body in a pig shed near Suwannee River State Park. Her remains, found 2 months later, were decomposed. But the evidence of fiber from Bundy's van, a blood stain, linked him to the crime. The murder of a child marked a new low, a line crossed that turned even his admirers against him. The climax was near. On the 15th of February, 1978, in Pensacola, Bundy's luck ran out. Officer David Lee was patrolling at 1:34 a.m. when he spotted a suspicious orange Volkswagen. Bundy, driving the stolen vehicle, tried to flee, but Lee was relentless. A brief chase ended with Bundy on the ground, wrestling with the officer. "I wish you'd killed me," he muttered as handcuffs snapped on. At the station, he gave a false name, but his fingerprints betrayed him. When the FBI confirmed his identity, the news exploded. Ted Bundy, America's most wanted killer, was caught. The relief was palpable, but so was the fascination. Who was this man who could charm and kill with equal ease? The resolution was as dramatic as the chase. Bundy was charged with the Chi Omega murders and Kimberly Leach's killing. His trials, held in Miami and Orlando in 1979 and 1980, were televised. A circus of spectacle and showmanship. Bundy, acting as his own attorney, strutted like a rock star, his suits crisp, his voice commanding. He cross-examined witnesses with flair, wooed the cameras, even proposed to Carol Ann Boone, a supporter, during a trial recess. She accepted, and the crowd gasped, but the evidence was overwhelming. The bite marks, matched to Bundy's crooked teeth by forensic odontologist Richard Souverone, fibers from his van, eyewitnesses who placed him at the scenes. The juries didn't waver. On the 24th of July, 1979, he was convicted of the Chi Omega murders, and on the 10th of February, 1980, of Leach's murder. Each verdict brought death sentences, the judge's words ringing, "You are a sick and vicious person." As Bundy sat on Florida's death row, the world couldn't look away. He gave interviews, teasing confessions while maintaining a veneer of innocence. Women sent love letters. Criminologists studied his mind. His charisma held even as his fate was sealed. On the 24th of January, 1989, at Florida State Prison, he faced the electric chair. Outside, crowds chanted, "Burn, Bundy, burn." Inside, he confessed to over 30 murders, his voice calm, almost proud. At 7:16 a.m., 2,000 volts surged through him. The man who'd captivated a nation was gone, but his shadow lingered, a chilling reminder of the monster beneath the mask. The electric chair loomed in Florida's Ryford prison, its stark metal frame a silent promise of justice. It was January 1989, and Ted Bundy, the man who danced with death for over a decade, was running out of time. His trials had been a spectacle televised circuses where he'd played the star, his charisma, a weapon that captivated juries, reporters, and a disturbingly devoted fan base. But now, with his execution date set for the 24th of January, the mask was slipping. The world leaned in, breathless, as the charming killer faced his final act. Would he confess? Would he taunt to the end? Or would he unveil a darkness even deeper than anyone imagined? The stage was set for a climax that would sear Bundy's name into history, leaving a trail of questions that still haunt us today. In the days leading up to his execution, Bundy's cell was a pressure cooker of tension and intrigue. Death row was a grim labyrinth of concrete and steel, but Bundy, ever the performer, treated it like a stage. His hair was grayer now, his face etched with a strain of years in confinement, yet his eyes still burned with that hypnotic intensity. He received visitors' lawyers, reporters, even FBI agents each, hoping to pry open the vault of his mind. The public was ravenous for answers. How many had he killed? Where were the bodies? And why? Bundy, sensing the spotlight, began to unravel his secrets, but not out of remorse. It was control, one last chance to wield power over a world that had condemned him. On the 22nd of January, 2 days before his execution, Bundy sat down with Dr. James Dobson, a conservative radio host and psychologist. The interview was a masterclass in manipulation, broadcast to millions who hung on his every word. Bundy, dressed in a beige prison jumpsuit, leaned forward, his voice low and deliberate, dripping with faux sincerity. He blamed his crimes on pornography, claiming it had twisted his mind a convenient scapegoat that dodged the deeper truth. "I'm not blaming anything but myself," he said. But his words felt rehearsed, a performance for a religious audience. Yet, as the camera lingered, a flicker of something raw broke through. "You feel their last breath," he whispered, describing the act of killing, his eyes glinting with a chilling mix of pride and detachment. The nation shivered, caught between revulsion and fascination. Was this the real Ted Bundy? Or or just another role he played? The confessions didn't stop there. Bundy summoned FBI Special Agent William Bill Hagmaier, a young profiler who'd built a rapport with him over years of interviews. In a small, windowless room, the two men faced each other, the air thick with anticipation. Hagmaier, with his calm demeanor and sharp mind, was one of the few who could match Bundy's intellect. Bundy respected him, even liked him, in his own twisted way. "You want the truth, Bill?" he asked, a smirk playing on his lips. What followed was a floodgate of horror. Bundy admitted to 30 murders, though he hinted the number could be higher, perhaps far higher. He described the killings in clinical detail, his voice steady as if narrating a documentary. He spoke of Seattle's Taylor Mountain, where he'd left Linda Ann Healy and others, revisiting their bodies to groom them, to possess them in death. He confessed to burning Deborah Kent's remains in Utah, scattering her ashes to erase her from existence. He even revealed the fate of 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, his youngest victim, whose murder in a Florida pig shed had shocked even his staunchest defenders. But it was the Washington murders that sent chills down Hagmaier's spine. Bundy recounted the Lake Sammamish abductions of Janice Ott and Denise Naslund with a perverse nostalgia. "It was a perfect day," he said of the 14th of July, 1974. His voice almost wistful. He described luring Ott with his fake arm sling, her trusting smile as she followed him to his Volkswagen. He admitted to forcing one woman to watch as he killed the other, a detail so sadistic it left Hagmaier, a seasoned agent, visibly shaken. Bundy's words were a window into a mind that saw murder as art, each kill a brushstroke and a masterpiece of control. Yet, even as he confessed, he withheld key details, names, locations, exact numbers, dangling them like bait to delay his execution. "There's more," he teased, his eyes locking onto Hagmaier's. "But you'll have to wait." The tension peaked on the 23rd of January, as Bundy met with detectives from Washington, Utah, and Colorado. They arrived with maps, case files, and a desperate hope to close decades-old mysteries. Families of the missing, Anne Marie Burr, Donna Manson, Nancy Wilcox, clung to the chance for closure. Bundy, relishing the power, toyed with them. He confirmed killing Jorgen Hawkins in Seattle, describing how he knocked her unconscious behind her sorority house and drove her to a secluded spot. "She was still alive when I left her," he said, a lie that offered false hope. He admitted to disposing of bodies in Washington's Issaquah dump site, where Ott, Naslund, and Hawkins were found, but refused to pinpoint others. "You'll find them when I'm gone," he said, his smile cold. The detectives pressed, their voices rising, but Bundy leaned back, untouchable. He was writing the script, and they were mere players. Outside the prison, the world was a carnival of chaos. Crowds gathered, some holding signs that read, "Fry Ted," others clutching photos of his victims, tears streaming down their faces. Radio stations blared updates, and bars in Tallahassee sold Bundy burgers burnt to a crisp. Women who'd once sent him love letters now picketed, their infatuation soured by his child victim. Yet, a strange allure lingered. Ann Rule, the true crime writer who'd worked with Bundy in Seattle, published The Stranger Beside Me. Her book flying off shelves as readers devoured the paradox of a killer who could be both charming and monstrous. Bundy's ex-girlfriend, Elizabeth Klupfer, now living quietly in Washington, watched from afar, haunted by the man she'd loved. The nation was addicted, caught in a spell that was equal parts horror and seduction. Inside, Bundy's final hours were a whirlwind of defiance and desperation. He met with Carol Ann Boone, his wife, who'd married him during his Florida trial in a bizarre courtroom proposal. Boone, pregnant with his daughter, clung to his innocence, her devotion a testament to his manipulative charm. Their farewell was tearful, but Bundy's focus was elsewhere. He wrote letters to his mother, Louise, in Tacoma, expressing love but no remorse. To Hagmaier, he offered one last bombshell, a cryptic hint about an early murder, possibly Anne Marie Burr, the 8-year-old who vanished in 1961 near his childhood home. "Look closer at Tacoma," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Was it a confession or a taunt? Hagmaier couldn't tell, and Bundy wouldn't elaborate. The execution morning dawned, cold and clear, at 4 a.m. on the 24th of January, 1989. Bundy was led to a holding cell, his wrists cuffed, his face pale but composed. He declined a last meal, sipping only coffee. The prison buzzed with activity guards, lawyers, witnesses, all eyes on the man who defied justice for so long. At 6:50 a.m., he was shaved and dressed in a blue shirt and khaki pants, his head coated with conductive gel for the electric chair's electrodes. He walked to the death chamber, his step steady, his expression unreadable. The room was stark, the chair bolted to the floor, a black hood hanging ominously. Witnesses, families of victims, reporters, detectives sat in silence, their breath catching as Bundy was strapped in. "Any last words?" the warden asked. Bundy looked out, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends," he said, naming his lawyer and a Methodist minister. Then, a pause. "I'm ready." At 7:06 a.m., the switch was flipped. 2,000 volts surged through him, his body convulsing, his fists clenching. Smoke curled from his scalp, the air heavy with the smell of burnt flesh. 1 minute later, he was pronounced dead. Outside, the crowd erupted, cheering and chanting, "Burn! Bundy! Burn!" Fireworks lit the sky, a grotesque celebration. In Seattle, Utah, and Florida, families wept, some with relief, others with lingering pain. The monster was gone, but the wounds he'd left were raw, eternal. Yet, the story didn't end there. Bundy's confessions, though extensive, were incomplete. He'd named 30 victims, but investigators suspected dozens, more perhaps 100. Bodies remained unfound, families left in limbo. The hint about Anne Marie Burr gnawed at detectives, who reopened the case, scouring Tacoma for clues that never materialized. His words to Hagmaier, "There's more," echoed like a curse. What else had he done? Where were the others? And what drove a man so gifted, so handsome, so brillianto, become a void of humanity? Criminologists like Matt DeLisi argued he was a psychopath from youth, perhaps killing as early as 14. Others, like Rule, saw a man shaped by rejection, his illegitimacy a wound that festered into rage. The truth, like Bundy, was elusive, a shadow that slipped through every attempt to pin it down. As the crowds dispersed, a new question emerged. What of Bundy's legacy? His crimes had changed America, sparking stranger danger warnings, advancing forensic science, and fueling a true crime obsession that thrives today. His Volkswagen, now a macabre relic, sits in a museum, drawing gawkers. His daughter, born to Boone in 1982, lives under a new name, her father's shadow a secret she carries. And somewhere, in the files of the FBI, in the memories of survivors like Carol Duranch, in the grief of families, pieces of his story wait to be uncovered. Was there another accomplice, as some speculated? Did he kill in other states, California, Oregon, even Canada? The answers are out there, buried in the past, waiting for someone to dig. Want to know what secrets Bundy took to his grave? Curious about the cases still unsolved? The clues he left behind? The next chapter of this chilling saga is coming, and it's darker than you can imagine. Stay tuned to our channel for part 5, where we chase the ghosts of Ted Bundy's final mysteries. Don't miss it, the truth is closer than you think.